Hello all, welcome back. And in this video, we'll be discussing about the Industrial Relations Code. If you're preparing for EPFO and if you're also preparing for UPSC Prelims 2021, this is going to be important, but the orientation would slightly change. This video is made in tandem with the requirements of EPFO, so please look at it from that perspective. But if you're preparing for UPSC, you can understand the broad philosophy behind this industrial relations code and understand the nuances of the logical inclinations of our government in formulating this industrial relations code. Let's get started. So we have discussed three codes till now: the wages code, the social security code, and industrial safety code. In the beginning of this various codes, we have discussed that the center has subsumed 29 different laws and created the four codes. Four of them were a part of wages code, nine of them were subsumed under the social security code, 13 were subsumed under the industrial safety code. Now we are left with three. So these three together constitute the industrial relations code, and let us have a look at what these three are. Now, it is difficult to remember a lot of codes. Like in the previous code, 13 laws were subsumed, but in this, only 3 laws were subsumed, or these are now repealed. And the day notification comes out about the implementation of these laws, all of them will stand repealed. The 3 laws are Trade Union Act of 1926, a British era law. The next one is Industrial Employment Standing Order Act of 1946 and Industrial Disputes Act of 1947. The provisions of these particular acts, which were important from the perspective of EPFO, are slightly less important now, given the fact that we have this industrial code right now. However, any important provisions will be covered in subsequent videos. So what is the scope of this particular video, and how should we prepare this industrial relations code from the MCQ perspective? There are four things to know: how to form a trade union, how to register a trade union, what is the process involved in this, what is the concept of a negotiating union, what is retrenchment, what is layoff, what is the legal definition as per this code, what is the definition of a strike, and what is the definition of a lockout. So these are the things that you have to know. The first thing that you have to understand is that the very intention of formulating these codes is to ensure that there is some sort of uniformity across the country with respect to labor laws. So obviously, when the government is trying to define something, in this case the definition of industry, you can observe this uniformity across laws. So if you are preparing something from the perspective of MCQs, you always have to focus on exceptions. There is nothing exceptional about this particular definition. So industry is basically anything that is related to goods and services production. In this industry, you have two stakeholders mainly: the employer and employee, and the interrelationship between them is all about industrial relations. However, there are certain exceptions again here. What is not an industry? You can expect questions from this area more than any other point. Take a look at this: charity. If there is a charity, there is absolutely no scope for conflict between employer and employee, because in a charitable organization, most of the work is done on a voluntary level. When you're talking about government bodies cannot expect trade unions. Say, for example, organizations like the police, they cannot have a union. This is to ensure that public service delivery, wherever there is service orientation, public service orientation, you cannot expect the norms to apply here. The third one, defense and everything that is related to its R&D. So this is national priority, which is strategic interest of our country. Therefore, the people working in these organizations also cannot have trade unions. The next one is atomic research, again for the same reason. We also have domestic services. And remember, any other activity which is notified by the government from time to time can also be an exception. So to sum it up, you have to know the definition of industry, the stakeholders involved. You have to remember that not only goods, even in services, if there is a relationship between employer and employee, then this code applies. You have to focus on the exceptions and understand the logic behind it. That is all you have to know from MCQ perspective. The second thing that you have to know is the definition of workers. So worker is any person in any industry, including journalist. So you have to note the exceptions again. What are the exceptions here? Armed forces. So personnel employed under the Army Act 1950, Navy Act 1950 and Air Force Act 1957, these employees cannot be covered as a part of this definition of worker. Similarly, you can't expect the police to be a part of this. The third set, managerial and administrative employees cannot be defined as workers. The reason is managerial or administrative part of the employees, generally it is deemed that they are uh, on the side of the management, or they are working in the interest of the promoters of the company or the board of directors, and workers are generally believed to be vulnerable sections who do not have a bargaining power unless until they show it collectively. So most of the administrative workers and managerial workers, the workers don't take them into confidence. So in common language, we might call them workers of a company, but as far as the legal definition is concerned, they are out of the ambit of that definition. And again, the salary of 18K is taken to be a threshold. I want to correct a small thing. In the previous video, I've said that 15,000 is the limit. I beg your pardon, it is 18,000. Please correct it. So if a person has 18,000 or more salary, then such an employer is not a worker. He can't be a part of the trade union. So previously the limit was 10,000, now it is increased to 18,000. So the next thing that you have to know is the definition of trade union. What is a trade union? Basically, a union is a place where certain set of people come together for a cause. In the case of a trade union, the cause is collective bargaining for their self-interest. So a trade union is a relation where employee 1 and employee 2 are related with each other, and there is also relationship between another set of companies, like say for example Maruti, and then you have Tata. So in both the factories, so across these factories, workers having similar interests can come together under a trade union. So basically, when we are trying to regulate this trade unions, what we are trying to do is the relationship between employers and employees, we are trying to manage that. So that is the definition of a trade union. The next thing that you have to note, retrenchment. So retrenchment, a lot of people confuse it with layoff. What is the difference between retrenchment and layoff? You have to understand this. So retrenchment is nothing but removing an employee. The boss decides to fire a worker, and this provisions are generally applicable for people who have less than 18K salary, or it is applicable for workers. So what is the exception here? If the employee takes a voluntary retirement, if he reaches the superannuation age, that is the age of 58 or 60 as per the company's policy, or if the person involved is under a fixed term employment. Fixed term employment, as the name itself says, you are under a contract job. So the thing to note is, non-renewable contracts does not mean retrenchment of an employee. So this word retrenchment is actually a negative connotation, because when you're retrenching the worker, you're basically firing him, and this puts him in a very precarious situation because he does not have any other backup job. So the intent behind this retrenchment is to give some temporary relief so that he can find a new job and sustain his family meanwhile. So how exactly is it different from layoff, and what are the provisions? We'll be dealing with that in further slides. The next possible question is the registration of a trade union. So as per this code, what is the process? please pay attention about the possible questions. Point 1, point 2. These 2 points can be possible questions, so please pay attention. What is the process for application? So if a set of employees come together, they can form a trade union, right? But as per the process, the minimum number of applicants is 7. This is not UPSC prelims civil service examination wherein you can expect numbers to be not asked. It is very much possible that numbers will also be asked. So please remember, what is the number of applicants? 7. So what is the minimum membership in a complete factory or an industry to form a trade union? It is 10% of workers, not employees, workers. That is people who have less than 18k salary. So all the people who have less than 18k salary, they can decide to form a trade union, or maybe within themselves there can be conflict of opinion. Say one person wants to join one trade union and another person wants to join another trade union. So this can be a possibility, but it doesn't mean that all the individual employees decide to form their own trade unions. That is not possible. So the very intent of having a trade union is to have a collective bargaining power, and it would be absolutely illogical to have individual members to be a part of this. So there should be room for diversity. At the same time, the very purpose of creating this trade union should not be defined. So that is the reason why this norm of 10% of the workers is kept. So 10% of the workers or 100, whichever is less. So it is not like you can create this trade union and after the creation or registration of this trade union, you can just let it go. That is not possible. You have to sustain it also. Otherwise, it will be dissolved. The same condition will apply. That is, 10% of the workers should continue to remain a part of this trade union, or 100, whichever is lesser, should continue to be a part of this trade union. Otherwise, it will be dissolved. So what is the maximum possible extent? Let us take for example, there are 500 employees or 500 workers rather, and 10% of them is 50. So can you say that you definitely need 100 people to form an organization? No, that is not truth, because we said that 10% of the workers or 100, whichever is less. So in this case, 10 trade unions maximum is possible. Go by this logic. So if 10% of the workers are there in that organization, theoretically the maximum possible is 10 trade unions. Now, the very reason why trade unions exist is to negotiate with the management. But isn't it a problem when you have 10 trade unions? There should be one representative union, right, for the workers to deal with the management. In such a case, when there are multiple trade unions, how do we go about it? This code handles that problem through the concept of negotiating trade union. So which union should be recognized as the legal one? If there is only one, obviously that is the choice. If there are multiple trade unions, the first possibility is that there are two trade unions. Then in that case, the one which has 51% of the workers will be taken, going by the rule of majority. If that is also not the case, there are 3, 4, 5 multiple trade unions. So what happens is, within that trade unions, a new union will be elected by the people of the same unions, and a negotiating trade union will be formed. So this will have a representation from all the unions in such a way that 20% of the workers from all the unions are accommodated. So representation is ensured through this concept of negotiating trade union to deal with the management. So this is the concept of negotiating trade union, another definition from which you can expect a question. The next thing that you have to know is the difference between strikes and lockout. Basically, any industrial activity would be hampered if either strikes happen because of the dissent from employees, and a lockout is initiated by the management, wherein the management denies employment completely during a dispute. So the provisions to handle such situations require intervention of the states, or through laws there should be certain mechanism to handle such crisis. So the process would be intended to reduce the uncertainty in the industrial activity, and therefore the law mandates that 60 days advance should be given to uh, the either case. Like in the case of strikes, the employees should give the management a 60 days notice, and vice versa during a lockout. So you have to note one more point. There is a caveat. So when we're talking about strike notice, it need not be 60 days. It can be more than that as well. Like say the employees decide that we will be giving 90 days. So you cannot initiate a strike before 14 days of the end of this. Say for example, if the union says that on 1st of April they released one notification saying that we'll be going for a strike after 3 months, that is considering a 30-day month. Let's say for example 1st August is the cutoff date that the workers gave to the management. So you cannot initiate a strike before say 14 days or 16th of July. So you have to give them some time because they have planned it initially for 1st of August. So before that it is not allowed as per the law. So generally whenever there is a conflict, you have conciliation and arbitration, two mechanisms to deal the conflict. Conciliation means a third party officer will actually get involved and try to settle the issue. So there is a window period. This window period is 7 days. What do you mean by this window period? Say the conflict began at this point and ended at this point. In this gap, uh, the conciliation officer tried to settle the issue and it ended on this date Y. So from Y till 7 days, you cannot start a strike or a lockout. Similarly, arbitration is also done by a third party, but it is more formal or it takes a legal route. In this case, it is not 7 days, it is 60 days after the award of this arbitration. Now, one might get it out, why this 7 days, why 60 days? Just because it is given in the code, you have to remember it. That is the nature of this exam. So there is no logic. There can be some logic, but it is not important for you. Just remember it. Some more numbers, another possible question. So this law says that there is a grievance redressal committee. In organizations which have 20 or more than 20 workers, such kind of an organization to negotiate, they don't have a trade union or something like that. In such case, a grievance redressal committee will be formed with maximum 10 workers. Another fact. Next thing is standing orders. Standing orders basically means that you are trying to create a rule or code of conduct in your organization, and this rule is applicable for how many members? Only to those factories or organizations or industries which have more than 300 workers. So basically standing order means the rules of working. So this standing orders mandatorily should classify the workers. Some can be semi skilled, some can be completely skilled. So this database is very much required, and this should be informed to the government so that we have better picture of our workforce. So if there are day-to-day administrative works as a part of this code, you are expected to create a standing order on the processes involved in this in order to streamline so that there is no conflict. Say for example, how do you capture attendance? So if the code says that, if the standing order rather, if the standing order of that organization states that you should punch in your biometric in the form of your thumb by say 9 o'clock, that is the rule set for the entire organization and everyone should follow it. This is to ensure uniformity and ease of administration. We have discussed the various provisions of other definitions. Now finally the provisions with respect to retrenchment and layoff. Retrenchment is when you get fired. So in the case of an employer trying to fire a worker, you have to give him a 90-day notice, or 3 months salary so that he can survive that 3 months. That is, you can either pay him and say, boss, you can find your alternative job within this 90 days. That is the reason why we are giving you this notice. Or the organization can also say, here is your 3 month salary, just take it and leave. This provision is applicable only when you have greater than 300 workers. So this is a mandatory initiative from the government. Say, for example, if you have greater than 300 workers, you should definitely give a 90-day notice or 3 month salary to that worker. You cannot deny him salary for 3 months. Once the organization got rid of that employee for whatsoever reason, to fill that vacancy, the first priority should be always an Indian citizen. Next thing, if the organization decides to shut the shop, closure notice should be given. Then government mandates that the organization gives a 60-day notice, and if there is an employee who has been working with the organization for more than 1 year, some sort of compensation should be given to that employee. However, there are certain exemptions for this retrenchment provisions which can be notified by the center or state from time to time. Remember, if there are any changes in the conditions of service, it cannot be arbitrary. You have to notify it as per the rules or as per the code. Now, coming to the issue of layoff. During the COVID pandemic, we have seen this issue of layoff becoming very severe. Basically, it means that the organization does not see any sort of need for services because of lack of business. So it can be a temporary end of services or a call to say, we don't have enough money, so we can't pay you. Maybe after the situation gets better, we'll recall. This is a layoff. So this sums up the various provisions of Industrial Relations Code, and therefore we complete all the codes. So in the next videos, we'll try to address the previous laws and important provisions from the perspective of those laws which can be asked in this present exam. So if you like this video, you can find the PDF of this lecture on t.me/Hindu highlights, that is a Telegram channel. Apart from this PDF, you can also find all the relevant explainers from newspapers from 2019. So if you like the work on this channel, you can share, like, and subscribe. You can also join this Telegram channel. That's it for now. Thank you.